We mentioned earlier that we are quite interested in doing some home brewing ourselves, and we've actually been donated a kit. We don't really know what any of it does. It's all like barrels and buckets and tubes. If we showed you what it was, maybe we could.
Well, yeah. Have you got a photo of the kit you got?
Photo? We've got one better than that, actually. So this kit was donated to me by my mate Sam, who moved to Poland.
Be careful when you open that, mate. It's packaging really tight.
But yeah, he only ever really did real ale on it, but I reckon we can maybe do something a bit more modern to it. Fucking hell. I mean,
Yeah, brewing.
hello and welcome to Planet Beer TV, where this year we're celebrating our third lap around the sun. And with that, we're going to start crossing a few things off our bucket list.
That's right, we're down here at Barron, where we're going to be brewing our very first collaboration beer with the ridiculously talented Jack Barron.
But this isn't just an exercise in marketing where we go into a brewery and rebadge a beer that's already in the tank. We've come here today with a very specific brief for the beer that we want to make. And the beer that we want to make is a real origin story beer for us, isn't it, Paul?
Absolutely.
And we're going to be brewing this beer with Jack and then releasing it for our third birthday event in February. So with all that said, Paul, are you ready to brew a beer?
Chris, I've got my Carhartt, I've got my cap. Let's brew.
Let's brew.
Come on.
Jack, thanks for agreeing to do this with us. This is really exciting for us because this is our first ever collab.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. It's a treat to have you here.
Oh, you liar.
Now, it might surprise you to know, despite the videos on YouTube, we don't really know much about brewing beer.
Well, we can learn together.
You know, joking aside, homebrew is one of the things that we want to start getting into. So doing something like this to start with, I always say we've done a lot of brewery tours, but we don't really retain any of the knowledge. We're only really going to learn on
brewing a beer.
Yeah. Do you know what we want to brew?
I
we haven't talked
imagine
about
a hazy IPA of some sort.
True. And I've actually got myself a little master plan of, that's the brief. That's what we want to do. So, yeah.
Oh, double IPA. Like Verdant. Keep left. The name of the beer.
This is very much from the Chris Desire Well, as he calls it. So
That's a horrible sound.
Desire well.
Chris's Desire
you always
Well.
say that. So a bit of a Verdant fanboy. I love Verdant. I think we all love Verdant, let's be honest.
Never heard of them before.
No, they're up and coming. But they did a beer called Keep Left many years ago, and Chris still...
For me, it's a pinnacle.
You keep saying it's still your favourite beer you've ever had.
Yeah. Wow. You know, one of those things where you just have a sip and then you end up just sitting there thinking, looking at the can and being like, fucking hell.
It was a game changer for you, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
It was that beer that just made everything click for you.
And I'd had other DIPAs before, but there wasn't any that had done that. And that's kind of what I want us to do. In a few weeks' time, having a little sip of it, and it's transporting me to that night in my living room.
Job done.
Getting all emotional there, aren't you?
Yeah.
But that beer is obviously a bit of a Southern Hemisphere showcase.
Yeah.
So it's Azaka, it's Galaxy, it's Motueka and Nelson.
Do you think you've got the ingredients in-house to make?
Yeah, I've got all those ingredients. I've never had that beer, as far as I'm aware, but we can make our interpretation of something like that.
Up for the challenge?
Up for the challenge.
Right. So you've had a bit of a chance to hopefully digest what we're doing and think about that, and you've gone away and I'd look to see if you've got the ingredients.
Yep.
We've got some of the hops here, which you happen to have open, so we're going to give those a little sample in a second.
Wonk. Yeah.
But we don't really know what else goes into making a beer like this, so it'd be really good to get an understanding of the ingredients.
I've started with using a new German grain called Heidelberg. So we're going to use a base malt of that, which is really particularly lovely in like German style lagers. That works very nicely as a base malt for all beers. And I think I've heard secretly that some of my favourite breweries are using it as their base malt, so it can't be that bad. So it's one of the first beers we're brewing with that grain. And then to make them hazy, it helps to have other stuff. So we've put in some spelt, which is like fancy wheat from Germany, some torrefied wheat, which is sort of like wheat that smells like popcorn. It's quite weird. Then some chip malt, which is gives a nice bit of biscuit and really good with foam retention, and some oats, which help with a bit of that gummy, sticky, hazy creaminess.
Yeah.
With Verdant's IPAs, I can't remember exactly, but I think they have used Vienna malt in the past. I think they use it often to give a bit of colour, so we can go down that route, if you'd like to go down that route.
Oh, I mean,
It's like a bit of orange.
You drink with your eyes.
Yeah.
We could put a bag of Vienna in there as well, which is often very nice just to give it a tiny bit of that extra biscuity sweetness.
Oh, we're gonna have to crack a beer in a minute. But before that, you've brought over a couple of hops that we're going to be throwing in there. What have you brought to the table here?
We'll start with the Azaka, which is an unusual hop.
You were saying to us off camera that you don't use this much.
I don't use it very often. I don't normally get an awful lot from it, but we will see if today's any different.
Yeah.
I've used it as a background hop. It's very bitter, so it's got a lot of potential. This is a single-purpose hop grinder. These are really tough hops today.
This looks suspiciously like a marijuana.
No idea what you
I don't
mean.
know what you mean.
No.
Do you mean the ingredients from a herbal jazz cigarette? Can we go in?
Please do. Heat them up in your hands a little bit.
And you're saying you personally don't get much from this, do you?
Azaka, well, I've used Azaka quite a lot in the past. I've never got a massive load of flavour out of it, but
It's a bit kind of spicy.
Spicy,
Yeah.
but I'm getting maybe not lime as such, but there's definitely some. I don't know, maybe it is lime. I think it's very citrusy.
Citrus with a bit of spice.
Yeah, bit of pepper.
it smells to me, I get that sort of pick and mix artificial sweet flavour, which is a nice flavour.
Yeah.
But it is. I guess it is quite subtle compared to some of the other hops. We've experimented.
So we're going to use quite a lot of that in the hot side because that will give us a nice starting point. And then we're going to pair that on the hot side with my favourite hop in the world, which is Motueka. This is Motueka Cryo, so this is actually an unfair comparison because it's double strength basically.
Yeah.
So for the newbies at home, cryo is generally a more concentrated version.
Pretty much, yeah. They use a fancy way of separating out the flavour. They take away 55% roughly of all the dry matter of the hop, so it's like cryogenically concentrated basically. But all of the oil is still there in the hop. It's just concentrated.
Oh wow.
So that's a big flavour.
Jesus Christ.
That's the pungent nature.
That's a smell.
There's a smell.
Oh, that's amazing though.
That's great.
It also has that
Just
sort of
amazing smell.
that curry lime leaf thing that you get.
Yeah, that's what it
in
is.
a Tom Kha Girl or whatever.
Kefir.
One of those like Thai soups.
Yeah.
That's
great.
When was the last time I had a Tom Kha Girl?
Last night.
That's gorgeous. That is.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's like I could have a soap made from that, or a
Yeah,
body gel.
that's a really good shout.
That is gorgeous.
Maybe we should do that instead.
Well, I was just going to ask as well. Again, we're trying to keep this a learning experience for everybody watching as well. So you mentioned hot side,
Yeah.
which kind of alludes to the fact there's also a cold side in brewing. So
Yes,
just explain
yes.
the difference between those two.
There are loads of confusing terms when we're talking about adding hops when we add them. Hot side means, so we are going to brew a beer today and we're going to have boiling wort, boiling pre-beer beer. And if you add the hops to the beer before you've chilled it down, it's called wort, not beer at that point, then that's a hot side addition. And if you add it once you've chilled it down to 20-ish degrees or below, that would be a cold side addition.
So hot side is mainly for flavour, cold side is mainly for aroma? Or do those two, is it not that simple anymore?
It's not that simple anymore. It used to be hot side was, well actually it used to be just hot side pretty much. Everyone would put a bittering addition at the very beginning of the boil and that would pretty much give you just bitterness. And you would get more of a flavour addition by putting it after the boil, but still when it's really hot. Now, when we're making these juicy IPAs, we add probably only 10 to 15% of the hops, maybe 20% of the hops. in the hot side, and then the remaining goes in the cold side. Sometimes 25% hot side, 75% cold side, but
Is cold side otherwise known as dry hopping?
yeah, same thing. And the term dry hopping is very confusing because there's not very much dry about it. You're
Yeah.
chucking hops into beer, right?
Yeah.
The dry isn't really that much of a useful term. It just
Yeah.
means adding hops later in the process when it's cold.
With Jack fully briefed, it was time to fire up the brew kit and get to work. But how will our Verdant-inspired DIPA take shape? And do me and Paul have what it takes to be brewers? Or will we just get in the way?
Come on, lads. Come and do some work.
Join us next time to find out.
Feels like it's bring your kids to work day, innit? It's like, pour that in there.
It does sort of feel like that.